further you got away from habitation, the maps ceased, and there's an awful lot of Canada that doesn't have any habitation. So it was a very large area we were photographing. It was a big achievement.
We created the map base for Canada, the whole map base.
What Canada ended up with was complete coverage of the country from the 49th parallel up to and beyond the Arctic Circle of this very large country of ours. Spartan Air Services was one of Canada's major air survey companies during the 1950s and 60s, and the major project they participated in was the aerial mapping of Canada from around about 35,000 feet. And this was a federal sponsored project to map all of Canada, for which you needed aerial photographs.
Spartan wasn't the only one. Kenting did some, the Aero Services did some, but Spartan was the biggest. It was a worldwide company.
It became a leader because its founders understood aerial mapping, and they attracted a group of people who I think loved the adventure and the challenge of getting this huge job done. They were given incredible responsibility out in the field to move the airplanes wherever they wanted to go to get the job done. They loved what they did. They loved fixing planes. They loved flying planes.
It was a tremendously long job, but Spartan managed to shorten the process quite a bit with the use of mosquitoes. That was an innovation. There were newer and better cameras, but initially the federal government, who was doing the contracts, estimated that it would be over 20 years just to do the photography. Well, in fact, Spartan had most of it nailed down once the mosquitoes arrived within 5 or 6 years.
As it grew very fast, because the opportunities were great, there was this massive project that needed to be undertaken. And so they were always on the lookout for appropriate aircraft to do the work. And besides the federal project, there are also many other companies and governments that could benefit from having aerial photographs. So that suggested a whole fleet of aircraft was required, those that flew at high level, medium level and low level. There were any number of roles to fulfill an aerial survey. And then there were fringe activities like ice patrols on the St. Lawrence, and then they got into the field of remote sensing, early remote sensing. So that required a whole different fleet of airplanes.
They did a lot of good work. They did a lot of photography work. They made a lot of money. They spent a lot of money.
We bought $10,000 worth of wholesale groceries in Edmonton, and it cost Spartan $20,000 to get those groceries flown up to Mole Bay. And there were 5 of us, the 3 crew, the cook, and the engineer. And we just ate royally up there.
Spartan undertook about nearly 60% of the aerial photography and mapping of Canada. So in terms of fleet size, they had something like 60 aircraft and helicopters, and had grown into a very large operation by the late 1950s.
You know, it was a leader in innovation, and they had an aggressive sales force. It was a well-respected aerial survey company during its heyday. Unfortunately, it got into problems and ended up disappearing.
Spartan was a leader in aerial mapping in Canada and throughout the world. But in 1959, when the contracts neared completion, poor management put the company into financial collapse. They went through a number of mergers, finally being acquired by Kenting Limited in 1973, and the name Spartan disappeared.